Hi everybody. I want to start the little presentation today just by thanking everybody for watching. Um, it might be a little bit lengthy, but I think it'll be worth your time to watch. The focus today mainly is going to be highlighting some things that I feel are really important that we do compared to other all natural producers. Also, we're going to go over some things that happen with the meat and everything that you're buying at the grocery store that I think a lot of people are kind of unaware. So we're just going to start out. This is a flyer that you might see around on our beef, especially around Facebook and that sort of thing. There's several things on this flyer that I think get kind of passed off to the back of the mind because they see it in other places. We're going to go over some of the terminology here in a little bit, but you see things on there like naturally raised, all natural. What do those things really mean? And that's what we're going to go over. I want you to keep those things kind of in the back of your mind as we move forward through our presentation. The naturally raised is kind of something that we put on there. It's something we feel that we go a little above some of the other all-natural producers, and I'll explain that when we get there. As you see underneath that, it says it's the healthy choice. Well, so that all kind of works together, and you'll see that as we go. We have no hormones, no antibiotics, no steroids, and we do not feed anything with any animal byproducts in any of the grain that they are offered. All of our cattle that we raise, finish, and butcher are born, raised right here on one of our places here in Lee County. So we do carry them from when they're born. We raise them all the way up. They spend their entire life right here. And actually the background of this picture is actually in one of our pastures. That's a picture that I took here a while back and just happened to use that for the background of some of our flyers and some of our material. You can kind of read that deal there. It just kind of describes the background of the breeding of some of our cattle as far as mainly there's a strong Black Angus influence. Our cattle are all pretty much, they are in the pasture at all times. We never confine them and force them to feed. When we wean these calves, we bring them down off the cow, we bring them down to some of our other pastures where they are turned out on other grass pastures, which is actually, that is one of the pastures, one of our grow out pastures in the background here. We start supplementing them at that point to a simple grain ration that's just mainly corn, cottonseed hulls, and that sort of thing. We do not implant these cattle with any kind of growth hormones or anything like that. If we end up having a calf or anything like that that gets sick and has to have an antibiotic, then they are pulled from our beef program. Most of the time, the way we run our operation, very seldom do we end up with any sick cattle that have to be treated with antibiotics. I couldn't tell you the last time I had to actually give antibiotics to a calf. That's part of our program. Everything is low stress because we keep our stocking rates very low, so there's a lot less stress on the cattle, a lot less, and we don't bring other cattle from the outside, nothing from the sale barns. Everything is what we raise, so we're not introducing bacteria from other farms, ranches, sale barns, or anything like that. We call the way once they move out of these pastures like this, actually after the weaning pasture, where they are offered a little bit of grain, once they are to a certain age where they can actually continue to grow without compromising any kind of body condition or anything like that, then we actually take them off of feed and they are strictly on grass. So then once we're ready and our demand and as our cycle moves, when they are old enough and then they are ready to go to our finishing pasture, then they're reintroduced to grain again. It's offered to them. They're still turned out on a pasture. They actually have to come to the grain and want to eat the grain to come to it. But that's as they get older, and we call that grain on grass finished. And all that does, the corn and that simple grain ration, all that does is add tenderness, juiciness, and flavor to the meat, to ensure that our customers are getting a great eating experience. So like I said, there's some things on this flyer, like some of the terminology, I just want you to keep in the back of your mind. We'll go over that here in just a few minutes. So as we move on, I want to talk about some of the labeling you might see at a grocery store or on the internet or anything like that. These labels actually are coming off of the USDA website. So let's start talking about like our product. We call it an all-natural product, and you see a lot of other all-natural products out there as well. So what the USDA says, an all-natural beef product would be a product containing no artificial ingredient or added color and is only minimally processed. Minimal processing means that the product was processed in a manner that does not fundamentally alter the product. The label must include a statement explaining the meaning of the term natural, such as no artificial ingredients or minimally processed. One thing I want you to realize here and to notice is that this term natural, from the USDA standpoint, is only relating to the processing of this animal when it goes to butcher and how the meat is handled. They're not talking about in the manner that the animal was raised. Okay, and that's where we feel like we take things a step further, and we raise these cattle in an all-natural environment. If something, like I said earlier, if they do get sick and they have to have an antibiotic or anything like that, that pulls them from our natural beef program. So when you buy something at a store, you see something else and you see the words natural or anything like that on the label, that doesn't necessarily mean that they were raised in an all-natural environment. And I'm gonna kind of explain that even a little further after we get done with our terminology little part of our talk here today. Some more is for beef, no hormones. The term no hormones administered may be approved for use on the label of beef products if sufficient documentation is provided to the agency by the producer showing that no hormones have been used in raising the animals. Okay, this is something that we do as well. We do not use any kind of growth hormones whatsoever. As we move into the antibiotics, we've touched on this a little bit. The term no antibiotics added may be used on labels for meat or poultry products, and sufficient documentation is provided by the producer to the agency demonstrating that the animals were raised without antibiotics. And I want to add something to that a little bit. It's changed here recently, but in the past, antibiotics a lot of times were added to some of these feeds, especially on younger animals and stuff like that. They kind of head off sickness to say, and mainly that is for animals that are kept in confinement, that are kept in either an intensive grazing program or a feedlot situation where you're really packing a lot of animals into a small area together, and that increases the bacteria load that these animals are going to consume with their diet, that they're going to breathe in, that they're going to drink out of the water, just because of the cross-contamination from being so many animals in a close area. This is something we're going to get to also that I think a lot of people don't realize how much chemical stuff is out there, like gassing and stuff like that. Something to me that's very scary is that this term chemical-free is not even allowed to be put on a label. To me, that would be something that I would like to put on a label because none of our products are gassed, none of our products have any sort of chemical whatsoever. We are truly a minimal processing. When it goes, we dry age our animals for a minimum of 14 days after they are butchered. They are hung and dry aged for, like I said, at least 14 days, and then they are cut and packaged in a vacuum seal package. That's how we create our shelf life, is by creating a fresh product and then with good quality packaging. We do not use any chemicals. We do not use any salt. We do not inject anything with any kind of water to increase the shelf life of our product. And all that is below is that's just the URL for where I got these different terms and terminology, and I just got that straight from the USDA Food Service Agency website there. That's all that is. All right, so there's a lot of other, like I said, natural, so-called natural producers out there, some that are very big, and one in particular that is from a very well-known individual that places his name on a lot of stuff, and I've watched a lot of other videos kind of about other all-natural beef products and other ranches, and they all talk about how their cattle are born on grass and they're started out that way, and then once we wean them, we move them to a feedlot, and here we stand, you know. So these are what a feedlot looks like, whether it's one of this size or a smaller one. Either way, they all seem to have the same similar concept. A lot of cattle, tight spaces. You see what they're standing on. That's a lot of room for bacteria right there. It's something that we tend to stay away from, so that's all we're doing right now is comparing other so-called natural products and operations to what our 3R Ranch's all natural products are, because this is actually one of our pastures with one of our bigger grow out pastures. This is, you'll see later some pictures. I think you'll see that this is a pretty standard thing around our operation. You'll notice there's small bunches of cattle in big pastures and green grass. They are grown from start to finish on grass. They never see a feedlot like this situation right here. Our cattle will never see that. So if you purchase a meat item from us, you know good and well that they were never in this situation, that this is how we raise our cattle from start to finish. Alright, so I'm going to switch over now to more what's in grocery store products. Some of these videos are pretty disturbing, and that's kind of the reason I put them on here. It even opened my eyes. I knew things were pretty nasty as to what some things they did in grocery store meats, but I really had no idea that it was to this caliber. So we're going to watch a few videos here, and just and then we'll gather back after that and move on.
Zahir used to work in the industry.
What did you do with meat that was past its best before date?
He gears up to give us a demo.
Something like this, they would take, they dip it in blood, just dabble it a little bit. Yeah, so just dabble it like that. And then as you can see, it looks a lot redder.
That's what you would do? You would take the brown meat and turn it red?
Yeah, so we would turn it red. And then if like, again, we do it as many times as possible, we just keep flipping it. We would rewrap them and put down a new sticker, which came with a new best before date that extended the shelf life.
And you won't look at ground beef the same when you hear this.
If it's really bad, if it's like this, we would dabble in a little bit of blood, throw it into the meat mincer with some redder meats, and then all together it would make it look red. And then we put it back up on the shelf.
And people would buy this?
Yeah, all the time.
Sounds misleading, but food safety expert Keith Warner helps us recreate what we've heard is going on with meat. We mix meat that's 4 days past its best before date with new.
How's it smell?
I'll let you do the honors.
Not too good. Not too good.
Turn it on. So how's this new blend look?
Looks totally fresh. It's well disguised.
Yeah, that looks good.
But could it be bad for you? We send it off for testing.
I'm curious how it tested.
So what we found was the meat was actually loaded with bacteria after only 1 day. It was loaded with these type of bacteria called Enterobacteriaceae. And what they do is that these can break down the meat proteins to make something called biogenic amines, which are toxic chemicals which can cause asthma, mood changes, all sorts.
People who bought that meat wouldn't know that it was spoiled because it'd been mixed up with the good-looking meat.
Exactly, it was deception at its worst, isn't it? Totally unethical. And in this case, I think it goes beyond ethics, doesn't it? It goes to safety and things like that.
Zahir has experience working in the grocery biz. Like others we hear from, he says mixing old meat with new happened all the time.
Who told you to do this?
So the butcher and my supervisor, or a lot of times he'd bring it in for me. He'd bring in like a stack of like meats that were brown, slam them on the table and be like, Zahir, unwrap these and relabel them and stack them back up on the shelves.
So, what advice does he wish he could have given his customers?
Don't buy from the front of the shelves. Reach on behind, grab this stuff in the back. That stuff is usually a little newer.
There's a secret reason some stores are adding sauces and spices to meats.
We've got some marinated drumsticks here. Why is stuff marinated?
Things get marinated if it's going off or it is off. They will marinate it to hide the odor, and if there are any dark spots or whatever, to mask that, and then put it out for sale. And things that are marinated actually sell for more.
You charge more for
Yeah.
stuff that has gone past its best before date.
Yes, it was referred to as value added. So because you're adding something to it, it increases the price. So in our store, things like steaks, strip loin steaks, they were going off, they were expired essentially, would be coated in some sort of barbecue marinade or cracked pepper, something with a really strong odor to hide the rotten smell.
What was the reason given for doing this?
It's all about profit and money, and the health of the consumer is not really a concern, it's how much money I can make.
With almost 10 years experience in the biz, this insider's got a tip for the next time you're out shopping for meat.
I would not buy pre-marinated meat or pre-spiced meat in grocery stores because you don't know what has happened to it. It could also be expired product.
Misleading people about best before dates is illegal. There are industry standards for best before dates. Stores are supposed to self-police, so there's no way of knowing how widespread these practices are.
All right, that's one. Let's do another here. By the way, the internet is full of these kinds of videos. I didn't have to look very
Crab
hard.
Fest is on now at Red Lobster. Now this is seafood.
When you buy meat at the grocery store, you look for steak that's bright red because it looks the freshest. But many supermarkets use a special gas in packages that keeps the meat looking fresh for much longer. The process is safe, but Lisa Guerrero reports some people think it could be misleading consumers.
Looks bright red and juicy, but this piece of meat is not safe to eat. Believe it or not, it's been sitting out for 11 days. So how could it still look so fresh? It's because it's being packed and gassed in a special process that most people never heard about, using a harmless amount of carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, and nitrogen, which keeps the meat looking fresh and bright red.
How long through this process can you make a piece of meat continue to look bright red?
To look red. Long time. A long time.
2 days, 3 days?
2 weeks, 3 weeks.
Weeks.
Dr. Ed Mills is a professor of meat science at Penn State University, and he says the color of the meat doesn't necessarily indicate it's fresh.
The consumer can't believe their eyes.
Because the consumer can't tell to look at the product that this is 2 weeks old or 3 weeks old. They have to look at the sell-by date on the package.
To demonstrate how well carbon monoxide gas works, we left 2 cuts of lamb out at room temperature. One was gas-packed, the other no gas. After a few days, the untreated meat turns a dark, unappealing color. But The gas-packed meat stays red, even after being left out for 8 days. The only visible sign of spoilage is the package puffing out and a bad odor when opened. We had the meat analyzed in a lab, and it's no surprise that both cuts are loaded with bacteria.
Probably after a few days in room temperature, it's not fresh, but it looks fresh.
Without refrigerated storage, I can't assure that the product is safe to consume.
A consumer can't look on the ingredients here
No.
and see that there's gas added
No.
to this package.
No, they'd have no way of knowing it.
John Nicolai heads a union that represents butchers in New Jersey. He thinks meat should be fresh cut in stores by trained butchers.
Tell the consumer, put up a big sign saying, we do not cut any fresh meat in this store.
He told us to talk to this union butcher in New Jersey.
All of the meat that I see here in this display wasn't actually cut here.
No.
None of it's cut here. Do the customers really know that there's gas in some of this packaging?
I don't believe they do.
They don't know that.
It's like in the Army, you know, don't ask, don't tell.
The gas packaging has been approved by both the FDA and USDA, and the North American Meat Institute says it has been used safely in meat products for many years.
And now, a startling ABC News investigation. A whistleblower has come forward to tell consumers about the ground beef a lot of us buy at the supermarket. Is it what we think it is, or is it padded with a filler the whistleblower calls pink slime? ABC's senior national correspondent Jim Avila set out to get answers.
Gerald Zernstein grinds his own hamburger these days. Why? Because this former USDA scientist, now whistleblower, knows that 70% of the ground beef we buy at the supermarket contains something he calls pink slime. Beef trimmings that were once used only in dog food and cooking oil, now sprayed with ammonia to make them safe to eat, and then added to most ground beef as a cheaper filler. It was Zernstein who, in a USDA memo, first coined the term pink slime, and is now coming forward to say he won't buy it.
It's economic fraud. It's not fresh ground beef. It's a substitute. It's a cheap substitute being added in.
Zernstein and his fellow USDA scientist Carl Custer both warned against using what the industry calls lean, finely textured beef, and is widely known now as pink slime. But their government bosses overruled them.
Why didn't you consider it beef?
Because it was a salvage product.
Leftovers?
Fat that had been heated at low temperature and the excess fat spun out.
Here's how it's done. Those waste trimmings are gathered, simmered at low heat to make it easier to separate fat from muscle, put in a centrifuge and spun to finish the separation. Next, the mixture is sent through pipes where it's sprayed with ammonia gas to kill bacteria, and finally compressed into bricks and flash frozen for shipment to meat packers and grocery stores where it's added to most ground beef. And it doesn't have to appear on the label, because over objections of its own scientists, USDA officials with links to the beef industry labeled pink slime meat.
The undersecretary said, it's pink, therefore it's meat.
ABC News has learned the woman who made the decision to okay the mix is former Undersecretary of Agriculture Joanne Smith, a call that led to hundreds of millions of dollars for Beef Products Inc., the makers of pink slime. When Smith stepped down from USDA, BPI's principal supplier appointed her to the board of directors, where she made at least $1.2 million over 17 years. She did not return our calls for comment. BPI says it had nothing to do with her appointment, and the USDA says, while legal then, under current ethics rules, she could not have immediately joined that board. Jim Avila, ABC News, Washington.
And we know this raises so many questions. Jim Avila is going to stay on this case. And coming up, and now
All right, I got one more if I could find it. I want to go through. maybe it's over here. I couldn't get it to give me the link. It kept taking me to something else. So, see if I can find it, and I will, for meat secrets. We'll watch it, and then that'll be the last one.
If you write anything on your computer, you need to get Grammarly.
I write pretty much all day, every day.
The same way people trust vegetables and fruits from local farmers, they are now regarding butchers as artisans who are masters of their craft.
Have you seen the trend get bigger over the years?
Yes, people are tired of getting gypped and cheated out of their meat and getting sick.
We met with butcher David Grant to find out what we need to know about buying meat. He started with an education on what some stores do with less than fresh beef.
If there's old beef that didn't sell the previous day, ground beef, they'll add a little blood to it, regrind it. Now you have fresh ground beef for 3 more days.
And there are other ways they keep the meat's color.
Red number 3, red number 5, even carbon monoxide, which can keep meat colorful up to a year, you never spoil.
Network news reports have shown supermarkets pushing expiration dates out by more than a week, and only 20 states regulate date labeling at all.
So why do supermarkets sell meats that they shouldn't?
There's a lot of pressure in those environments to meet their numbers and their quotas. Butchers, we will take the loss. That your business means that much to us.
David says another way grocery stores can trick you is by counterfeiting cuts.
There's times that I've had bacon wrapped filet. Please tell me I'm having just a really great bacon cut filet.
If it helps you sleep, I can do that.
But apparently meat glue, yes, meat glue, is used to pass cheap cuts off as high end.
It's pretty much coagulated blood and bacteria that help bind meat together. And once you roll it and refrigerate it, it looks like a sausage. So when you cut it, it looks perfectly like a fillet. Beforehand, you can kind of tell because you can tear it apart. But once it's cooked,
And so what happens when something like that happens? What can we do as consumers?
anything that says filet and is $10 is too good to be true.
I'm ingesting all of this.
The most counterfeited meat is hamburger.
If you're getting the pre-made tubes, I don't know what's in it. They could be dairy cows. It can be cows that are so sick and you don't know what it is. They might have pieces of tongue and eyes in there that they don't have to put on the labels.
Wow. The only way to know you're getting good hamburger is to ask the guy behind the counter to grind the meat in front of you. Number 3, recognizing quality cuts.
How do you know you're getting a not very good piece of meat?
The fat will always tell you the truth. It's greenish yellow, it's slimy.
Sometimes I'll find meat and I'll see brown spots on it. And I'm like, that is terrible meat. Is that necessarily true?
No, sometimes meat touches each other, or sometimes it was sitting before it got wrapped, so there's a little spot of brown. Not too bad.
Finally, the nose knows.
If you walk in and it has a rancid death odor, it shouldn't smell like that at all. If they're observing good sanitary practices, then when you come in, you'll just smell a meat shop with just the air conditioning, packaging.
Most butchers pride themselves on quality meat and personalized service.
Once we get you hooked, you're gonna come back.
Sign me up!
And from ribeyes to fillets, which will get you the most bang for your buck? Head to thelisttv.com right now. We have the 3 top cuts of meat under $10. Getting to the meat of the matter is at the top of our list. Alright, well, I think most of that speaks for itself. And that the last guy that they talked to, that butcher, he kind of touched on this a little bit. What I had just kind of in the statement down below. Some of this cattle, or the meat that you buy from the grocery store, you don't know if it's old cattle, if it's wore out cows and bulls. Heck, you don't know if it's even from the United States anymore, since we don't have any kind of origin based labeling for any of our beef. A lot of those products will be injected with water, salt, preservatives, or any kind of other additives to increase the shelf life, also to increase the taste and the juiciness.
So from that, we'll move on. When you get into buying better products versus what you just saw at the supermarkets, obviously there are things that impact cost. You know, the old saying goes, you get what you pay for. When you raise cattle the way we do, it takes more land to produce less cattle. And that is because we do keep our stocking rates low, as I mentioned before, because that reduces stress and health issues on the cattle. That way they also eat more grass and they eat less grain. If you have them stuffed in a dirt lot, feed yard type situation, all they're going to eat is grain. There is no grass available for them to eat whatsoever. In return with that, we also have more time on pasture, meaning these cattle are going to be here for a lot longer because we don't use growth hormones. And, you know, those growth hormones have been utilized by cattle producers in feed yards for years because that increases their feed efficiency rates and they get faster growth rates on less grain. So we don't use those, so obviously we have more time on pasture with those cattle. In return, adds more cost to us. As I mentioned earlier, all of the 3R Ranch's beef is from cattle born and raised on our place, and it never leaves our possession. There is some additional cost when we take them to a butcher because it costs us extra to have additional time for the dry aging process. But, you know, to us it's worth it because in the end that is going to maximize the flavor and tenderness, and we want happy customers and return customers. Alright, so get into a little bit of the cost. I need to explain this a little bit compared to a grocery store. When we're talking about to a comparable quality grade, if you took a whole carcass after I have a carcass butchered, cut, sent back to me, if I took the exact amount of weight, packages, number of packages, all that, and compared to a comparable quality from a grocery store, and when I say that, the grocery store meat is still going to be either an all-natural product that still came out of a feedlot situation, or it's going to still be a conventional beef product that they're saying is a high-quality product. If you did that, we're only 18% more than what the cost would be for the meat that you just saw on those videos. Now something else, when you talk about that grocery store meat that's injected with water and preservatives and all that stuff has weight to it. So when you're buying products by the pound, that is going to increase, that's coming out of your pocket. You're paying for that, so you're paying for water instead of meat. When you buy 3R Ranch's meat, which is a minimally processed with no fillers, you get what you pay for when you buy our meat. Okay, now when we get down to just ground beef, our ground beef lists for only 12% more than the ground beef from a grocery store, which you just saw. And we are less than 1.5% more is all on ribeye steaks. From time to time, we do give 10% specials. So if you catch our meat when we have it on special, I mean, that's really a great opportunity to get a great tasting product that's healthy and at a very affordable price. When we talk about quality grades, this is USDA's little scale for what they call, you know, their different quality grades, and there's actually a couple of more quality grades that are lower than the select. Generally at most grocery stores you're not going to find anything better than a choice grade, and that's because, as you see there on the screen, the prime is going to have the most marbling, and that is usually only sold to a high-end restaurant. I did go snooping around a little bit this weekend at a grocery store, and I did find some prime ribeyes sitting in the case that were not frozen. And that one video that we watched about the meat that sits out in air temperature, you know, that doesn't last, doesn't stay very good for very long. that what they were calling a prime ribeye that they wanted, I believe it was $17.99 a pound for. The fat was turning gray, and you could see the like mold on the fat of that steak, and it was almost like that throughout their whole case. It was pretty disgusting. We did not pay to have our cattle, we haven't in the past, because we haven't paid to have them graded on this scale, because it's pretty easy to tell where we are. I have a picture of some of our ribeyes in the next slide. So I want you to take a look at these. The reason we didn't pay to have ours graded was it was a cost issue that we felt like the consumer can see. They'll be able to taste it. Because if we start doing that, with what they were going to charge us to do that, you know, that would have to have added to the price of the product, and we're trying to keep things as affordable as we can. So remember kind of the prime and choice and select cuts of meat right here on these ribeyes. And we move to this one. These are some ribeyes that we took out of the package here and cooked for ourselves. As you can see, the amount of marbling that is in this meat is as much, if not more, than what shows up there on their prime scale. So obviously, since I didn't pay to have it graded, I cannot claim that it's a prime product, but as you can see for yourself, the fat in this is bright white. The color of the muscle is very, very good, and as you can see, all the marbling and everything throughout the steaks. And yes, they were very juicy and tender and very tasty. Now we're just going to go through a few pictures. I said earlier in the presentation that I would have some pictures that kind of showed cattle in our operation, and that you would see that there is no feed yard situation anywhere here. This is one of our main cow pastures here. As you can see, there's cows and calves, everything right there, and they're all on pasture. Go to the next one. There's some more. This is kind of mixed. Let's see, the two pictures on the left obviously are in the cow-calf pasture where they were born. Cow with a young calf there on the top left in the tall lush green grass. The picture below that is a nice calf that we had. She was that was right before they were ready to wean, but you can see how deep the grass is there. We move over to the right. That was in one of our finishing pastures there, those bigger calves there. You can see how good a shape they're in. Obviously they're in grass also, not standing in a pen. And then that picture below was also cattle in a finishing pasture right there. So if you like what you see, I hope you learned something today, even if you're not interested in buying beef from you, or from us, which I hope you are after you've seen what we've showed you today. If anything else, go to our 3-R Ranches Facebook page. Keep up with us. Click the like button. You'll be able to keep up with when we have things for sale, even when we have replacement cattle for sale. We still sell some replacement bulls and some replacement heifers. So if you're interested and just even want to just keep up with what we're doing, we post some random pictures from time to time, and just go to our Facebook page, like us, keep up with us. If you want to call me, if you'd like to come out and have a ranch tour or anything like that, there's my phone number. And hope you've enjoyed our slideshow and our presentation today, and we hope to hear from you.